Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the Pentart Classic Crackle Varnish. This particular varnish is a two-component varnish. So you have the first component that will be placed on needing to dry, and then the second one will actually show the cracks. I will go ahead and do a demonstration for you today. But first of all, I thought it would be good to go through some of the other cracking systems so that you can get a comparison of how the classic Crackle Varnish looks compared to some of the other varnishes. So first of all, the classic Crackle Varnish, it is just that. It gives you classic crackles. So the crackles tend to be smaller. This particular example that I have here is just decoupage paper, the component one after it dries, then the second one, and then after that I've highlighted the cracks with just an antiquing paste. So you can see here the cracks that have come out. I actually went ahead and did it on a piece of resin. The Crackle Varnish can be used on anything. It can be used on ceramic, resin, paper, your choice. So this particular one is just a resin piece. And as you can see, I put it on here, and then I used the same thing. I used, it's Pentart's antiquing gel. So I did the ochre for the inside here, and then I just used the patina green for the frame. As you can see, it gives it a very beautiful aged look. Okay, so that's the one that we're going to demonstrate. I'll actually do a little demo for you with this one, but again, like I was saying, I wanted to kind of show you Pentart has a few different lines of crackle, and they're all very beautiful depending on what you want to accomplish. This particular one is a one component crackle medium. Okay, so basically the way this one works is you can put on like a dark acrylic paint, obviously let that dry, put on your one component, and then put on probably a lighter acrylic on top, and then that will give you this. So you can see that underneath color will come through in the cracks. Okay, so if we compare these cracks to the classic crackle, they're a little similar. You've got some smaller veining. You know, this is the reason why there isn't cracks here, is because I didn't put a lot of the crackle medium. Again, we'll go through this, but depending on how much of the component you put on is how big or small your cracks will develop, and depending on the system as well that you're using. Okay, so this is the one component. Okay, there is also what we have here is another two component, and this is the fine line crackle. So the fine line crackle, it gives you a little bit bigger of the cracks. Okay, now again, this is the same technique. It's just decoupage paper, first component, after the first component dries, then the second component. Okay, so now if we put this against this, again, you can see that the fine line is bigger than the classic. Okay, so that one's the fine line. We also have this is called cracking paste. And the cracking paste you can use with the Universal 3D cracking primer or the cracking paste primer. Okay, I use this. Obviously, this is the one I use, the cracking paste primer. Like I said, we also do the distribution for a 3D cracking primer or cracking paste, and this is what you get here. Now, again, depending on how much of the cracking paste you put on, you can get really thick 3D cracks. Okay, so again, if we compare it again, you can see this one is a little similar, but again, this is going to be just in, this comes in black and white. So if you were looking for something similar to the classic Crackle, but you knew that you wanted either a black or a white, you could also do that, right? And like I said, so there's a universal or a cracking primer that will work with this one. There also is another two paint cracking system, which is this here. So this is the first part and then the second part, and these come in colors. Obviously, we actually have 8 colors in this one. I have just the 3 here. And again, if you knew of a color that you wanted, then, this one would be, you don't have to worry about doing any acrylic painting or anything, because you can just, if it has that color that you needed. Now this one, what I did, because this one has the ability that you can actually sand it back, put on furniture. You could put this on with a dauber. It gives you the texture. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's texture on that, on this side. And I actually did sand this side back. And then I just went ahead and did the edges with like an antiquing paste, just to darken up the edges, just so you can kind of get an idea of what this one looks like. And then if we grab the Crackle again, you can see the cracks on here are quite different. Okay. Then the last one that I will show you before we get into the little demo is the random Crackle. And just as the name says, it's very random. I didn't put much on here, but look at, if you can tell, it's just very random where the cracks appear. Okay, so again, this one is going to crack pretty much over your entire surface, and this one, as the name says, it's going to be random cracks. All right. So we will go through a little demo here of the classic Crackle. The classic Crackle Varnish, it does come in, Pentart actually carries this in 4 different sizes, but the Royal Court distributes it to our retailers, in 2 sizes, the 50 mil and the 100. So this here that I have is the 100. And then just to give you an idea, this is the 50, okay? So it would be these 2 sizes that we distribute to our retailers. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to take some rice paper. This is actually just ITD rice paper. And I have a little frame here. I've already primed it. It's just a wooden frame. I've primed it with the Pentart acrylic primer. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and put the rice paper inside, and then we will go ahead and use the classic Crackle, and I'll show you exactly how it works. Okay, so I have the decoupage paper down, and I just have an acrylic matte paint in the color ivory all the way around. Now what we'll go ahead and do is start with the first component. So we will grab a brush here. I'm actually going to use an antiquing paste, and I'm thinking we'll probably use maybe the gold. That'll probably look really pretty, and maybe even some of the Umbra antiquing paste to show the cracks. So I'm thinking of doing the gold inside and then maybe doing the Umbra just out around, so you can really see cracks. Again, when you're doing this, what I like to do is I like to kind of try to put an even layer and not have it going in, a bunch of different directions, if at all possible. And then like I have to get the edges or whatnot. But now how much of the component one that you put down is the cracks that you're going to see. So if you have some areas that are thinner with the component one, you might not get cracks in that area if it's too thin. Okay, so and what I like to do is once I have it done, once I have the layer down, I don't want to go back up here and start putting, another layer on, because it's already starting to dry, and you will notice if you try to do that, it'll drag because it's already tacky. Okay. Of course, if you've missed the area and you want to put more down, go ahead. But I wouldn't go over the entire area all over again. Just put a layer on. Now, ideally, when you are doing the Crackle systems, any of them, you want to let it dry naturally, but you can accelerate the drying process with, a heat tool, your heat gun or whatnot. But ideally, if you can just let it dry naturally, that would be the best way. And of course, for the purposes of the video, I'm going to put it all over. You know, you would need to do this, obviously. You can put it just on the decoupage paper, or just on the frame, whatever you're going for, the look you're going for. So I try to get a good even layer over the surface that I'm doing. Okay. And then let's dry it a little. You don't want to keep the heat. If you are going to dry it with the heat tool, make sure you keep it continuously moving. You don't want to just keep it on one area, okay? Now, when component 1 has gone completely translucent, that's how you know it's dried. And then you can continue with component 2. But until it's completely translucent, clear, you don't want to put on the second component. Okay, so it's dry. As you can see, it's clear, it's translucent everywhere. My heat tool gets very warm. I have found that if I go straight in with the second component right away, the cracks don't appear as well if I were to let this cool. So my suggestion is, you know, before you go in with the second component, to let your project cool down so that it's not, because right now I could feel that it's very warm. So let's let this cool down for just a second or two, and then we can go in with the second component. It's pretty cool to touch now. So let's go ahead and do the second part. You'll notice that the second component is a lot thinner than the first. Okay. So I will go ahead. I'll go ahead and do the inside first. And I would kind of follow the same rule that I talked about with the first one. You know, once you get a good layer down, don't keep going back over it, because it's going to start, you know, mixing with the first component, and it's going to start cracking. And if you continuously move over it with the component in your brush, the cracks aren't going to appear as well as if you would just let it go with just the first, you know, one layer. And you don't need as much of the second component, just a good layer over all of it. You know, like I said, the first component is the one that, you know, dependent upon how much you put on, is how much it's going to crack in that area. Component 2, if you will, is what activates the cracks. Okay. You might find, because component 2 is thinner, that you might have to, you know, watch that nothing is dripping. Because it is thinner, sometimes it does. You might have a little drip here and there. And just, lightly go over that with your brush like that. Let's see. Oh, it's kind of gathered here in the edges. So I'm not putting the brush fully down and swiping over it. I'm just picking up where there's a good amount, has gathered in that area that I don't want to see like that. So we'll go ahead now and put the heat tool on this as well, and then we will put the antiquing paste on, and you'll be able to see the cracks. Again, with this one, keep the heat moving. Don't leave it concentrated on one specific area and let it get too warm. Just keep the heat moving. And I actually see a little drip right here, so I'm just going to take a brush. And you'll notice component 2 doesn't take nearly as long to dry as component 1. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's a lot thinner. And it is pretty much dry. Again, my heat tool gets very warm, so before I'm going to put on this antiquing paste, I'm going to go ahead and let it cool because, I don't want it to melt my paste. Now that the project is pretty well cooled down, I'm going to go ahead and take just a soft bristled brush, and I'm going to grab the antique paste by Pentart in gold. And I'm just going to take my brush and move it all the way around in there. And hopefully you can see the cracks. I'm just going to take a cloth and wipe off the excess. See if you can see all the cracks that are appearing in there. And you can do the antiquing paste as much as you want, depending on what you're, want to see, how much. But that gold is really pretty. It gives it like a sheen in there. So now let's go ahead and take some of the Umbra, and let's use the same brush. There you go. You see that? So again, I love all of the systems. It really depends on, your project, what you're doing, what kind of cracks you want to see. Big cracks, small cracks. If you want to use the colored, there's something for every project. Something suitable for every project. But I really have enjoyed adding this element to my projects. So oops, sorry about that. Hit the camera with the brush. Go all the way the outside. Take that same cloth and then just wipe off the excess. Look at how cool that looks. Look at that. Can you see all of those? How neat is that? Again, you know, depending on what you want to see, how much of the cracks you want to find, then you can put in you can go over it again with the antiquing paste, define the cracks even more, make them darker, wipe it back again. Pentart has, you know, antiquing gels you can use, which is what I was showing you from the frame earlier, which come in different colors. This paste comes in different colors, so just, I love the effect it gives to your projects. There you go. Very easy to use. You know, I think the longest part, like I said, is just the drying time, but you can accelerate it with using a heating tool, or if you want to, you know, just put on the component one. If you're doing other parts to your project, let it dry and then put on the second component. Either way, I'm actually going to put a little bit more of the gold in there. I will grab another brush though, since the Umbra is a little dark. There you have it. I would probably go in and clean up the corners a little bit, you know, so we don't have any buildup in there, but there you go. So that is the classic Crackle Varnish, the second component. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. You can, like I said, I will, at the end of this video, you'll see the website where you can find a retailer near you that has the varnish systems, and if you create a project using any of the varnish systems or the classic Crackle Varnish, please tag us. Let us see what you've created.